When Andrew Hale, a high-powered CEO and single father, stopped at a quiet gas station on a road trip with his daughter, he never imagined what he would find behind a dumpster. A newborn baby, a handwritten note, and a decision that would force him to choose between comfort and conscience. This is a deeply human story about abandonment, hope, and the silent courage of doing what's right, set in the vast landscapes of Oregon and the fragile corners of the human heart. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss one of our powerful stories that reveal the best and most complex sides of humanity. The phone vibrated in the console of the Tesla. 3 missed calls from a Japanese investor, 1 message from Emma's school counselor, 2 emails marked as urgent. Andrew Hale silenced the screen with a swift tap and forced a smile into the rearview mirror. Emma, in the back seat, was quietly humming a song from her tablet. Strands of blonde hair stuck to her forehead in the muggy morning heat. "Are we there yet?" she asked, eyes fixed on the road, as if sheer willpower could make her grandparents' house appear. "An hour and a half. Want an apple?" "A hot one? No thanks." Andrew took a deep breath. This was his monthly attempt to be a full-time dad. Drop the emails, the meetings, the pitch decks. Step down from the pedestal and sit on the floor with her. But everything still felt artificial, like a poorly tailored suit. The road through rural Oregon stretched endlessly ahead. In the middle of nowhere, a lone gas station appeared like an oasis. Andrew pulled up next to the pumps, turned off the engine, and stretched his shoulders. "Need the restroom?" "Only if it's quick." Emma walked into the mini-mart while he filled the tank. The hum of the pump filled the dry silence around him. And then, a cry. Soft, uneven, persistent. He frowned. Not quite human enough to be a cat, but not wild enough for a dog. It came from behind the metal dumpster, next to the fence separating the station from an empty lot. Andrew walked around. There, among wind-blown plastic bags and a soggy cardboard box, was a baby, wrapped in a thin flannel blanket, cheeks flushed, eyes swollen from crying. Next to the baby, a grocery bag with diapers, a half-full bottle, and a folded piece of paper. Andrew's hands trembled as he picked up the note. The handwriting was simple, almost childish. "Please take care of him. I tried everything." For a moment, everything went quiet. The gas pump, the heat, the sound of traffic in the distance. He looked at the baby, then at the note, then back at the baby. "Daddy?" Emma appeared next to the car, frowning. "What's that?" Andrew swallowed hard. He had no answer. Just one uncomfortable certainty forming in his mind. Their lives had just changed forever. Andrew held the baby like he was made of glass. The infant weighed almost nothing, yet in Andrew's arms, he felt like a responsibility too heavy to bear. Emma stood by his side, wide-eyed and silent. She didn't ask more questions, not yet. The door of the Minimart opened with a squeak. A man in his 50s stepped out, wiping his hands on a stained towel. Name tag, Daryl. "You all right over there?" he called out, squinting against the sun. Andrew hesitated. There's a baby. Someone left a baby behind your dumpster." The man dropped the towel. "Jesus Christ. Again? Again?" Daryl walked over, now serious. "Couple years back, same thing. Different baby, same damn spot. Never thought I'd see that again." Andrew showed him the note. Daryl read it without a word, then sighed and pulled out his phone. "Better call child services. They'll send someone." Andrew nodded but didn't move. The baby had stopped crying, as if exhausted. His chest rose and fell, warm against Andrew's shirt. "I'll call," Andrew said. "Just give me a minute." Back in the car, Emma buckled herself in. Her legs swung slightly above the floor like they always did, but her usual chatter was gone. "What's his name?" she asked. "I don't know," Andrew replied quietly, still holding the baby. "There's nothing else. Just that note." Emma looked at the child like she was memorizing his face. "Can we keep him?" Andrew felt the weight of her words press into his chest. "It's not that simple, Em." "Why not?" "Because life isn't fair. Because there are systems. Because you can't just love something and call it yours." But he said none of that. Instead, he dialed the number for Oregon Child Protective Services. They met him at the nearest hospital, 30 miles away. A nurse took the baby gently from his arms, checking his temperature, heart rate, skin tone. No bruises, no visible injuries, just neglect. The doctor guessed the baby was about 2 weeks old. "Dehydrated, a little underweight, but he'll be okay," she said. A woman from CPS, Miss Randall, arrived with a clipboard and tired eyes. "You found him here?" she asked, pointing to the location on a map. Andrew nodded. "And this is the note?" She scanned it quickly and sighed. "We see these more than we should." Andrew didn't know what to say to that. What happens to him now? He goes into emergency foster care. We'll try to identify the mother. If she used any services recently, there's a chance we can trace her. But most likely, he'll enter the system. Emma tugged at Andrew's sleeve. "Can I say goodbye?" Miss Randall hesitated, then nodded. Emma approached the incubator where the baby now lay, wrapped in a clean hospital blanket. She didn't touch the glass. She just whispered something no one else could hear. Then she walked away, wiping her cheek with the back of her hand. Back in the car, Andrew stared at the steering wheel for a long time before starting the engine. Emma leaned against the window, and quiet. They drove off toward her grandparents' house, but Andrew knew already something inside him had shifted. And it wasn't going back. They arrived at the grandparents' house 2 hours later. It was a tidy, sunlit home nestled in the hills outside of Salem, a place where hydrangeas bloomed along the walkway and porch swings creaked gently in the wind. Emma ran ahead as soon as the car stopped, her small frame swallowed by her grandmother's embrace. Andrew followed slowly, as if his body were moving through water. Inside, the table was already set. Fried chicken, corn on the cob, lemonade sweating in tall glasses. His mother, ever the hostess, beamed at him. "Rough trip?" she asked. He sat down, resting his elbows on the table. "You could say that." Emma didn't mention the baby, but her quiet mood lingered, casting a subtle shadow over the evening. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Andrew stepped out onto the porch. The Oregon sky stretched above him, black and infinite. He sat on the swing and read the note again. "Please take care of him. I tried everything." He had no idea who wrote it or what everything meant. But he couldn't shake the thought. Whoever the mother was, she hadn't walked away out of cruelty. She had placed him somewhere visible, in public, in hope. He imagined a young woman alone, scared, watching from the shadows as he found her baby, praying, maybe, that someone would care enough to act. He hated that the system would now make that child into a case number. The next morning, while packing their things to return to Seattle, Emma handed him a drawing. It was the baby, smiling, in a house with a red roof. Emma stood next to him, holding his hand. Andrew blinked. "You drew this?" Emma nodded. "That's our house, and his name is Noah." He didn't ask why she chose that name. Children have instincts adults forget how to trust. On the drive back to Seattle, Andrew couldn't focus on the road. The silence in the car buzzed with questions. What if no one came for the baby? What if he ended up shuffled between foster homes, never knowing stability? What if, and this was the worst thought, what if this was the only chance that child had to be truly seen? At a rest stop outside Portland, he turned off the engine and sat in the car, hands on the wheel. "Daddy?" Emma's voice was soft. He looked at her. "Yeah? Are we going to visit him?" He didn't answer, but she didn't need him to. In his mind, something clicked. The systems, the boundaries, the legal procedures, all of that felt hollow now. He wasn't thinking like a CEO anymore. He was thinking like a father. And somewhere out there, a child without a name was waiting. Back in Seattle, Andrew couldn't focus. Meetings blurred, numbers on quarterly reports lost meaning. Even Emma's chatter at breakfast felt distant, like background noise to a mind caught somewhere else. That night, long after Emma had gone to bed, Andrew sat in his office with the hospital intake report. One line caught his attention, note signed with initials TB. He pulled up his laptop, heart racing in a way no investor pitch had ever caused. Searching through news archives, shelter records, local forums, it didn't take long. Tasha Bell, a 22-year-old woman reported missing 3 weeks prior, last seen near Highway 22, not far from the gas station. Known history of substance use, primarily methamphetamine, had been in and out of shelters and temporary programs since her teens. There was a photo. She had tired eyes, even in her early 20s, a sunken face, but a kind smile, like someone who hadn't completely given up. The kind of smile you give when you still want to be seen as human, even if no one looks at you that way anymore. Andrew stared at the screen for a long time. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He closed the laptop and sat in silence. The next morning, he called the CPS caseworker, Ms. Randall. Do you have any updates on the mother? He asked. Pause. I can't share confidential case details, she said, professional but weary. But I can tell you the child's name, for now, is Baby Boy Bell. We still haven't located a guardian or relative. Are you planning to put him in long-term foster care? Unless someone steps forward for custody, but that process can take months, sometimes years. Andrew took a breath. What if if I wanted to start that process? Silence. Then cautious interest. You'd need to complete a foster to adopt assessment, home study, background check, psychological evaluation. It's not a quick process, Mr. Hale, and it's not simple. I'm not asking for simple. I'm just saying people like you don't usually go through with it. Andrew felt a flicker of anger rise in his chest. What kind of people are those? The ones with options. That night, after Emma fell asleep, Andrew sat on the edge of her bed and watched her breathe. She had her mother's eyelashes, long, dark, delicate. Traits passed on without ceremony, without choice. He wondered what Tasha had passed on to her child, and whether the world would let him live long enough to find out. He didn't know her, but he could imagine her. A girl who'd lost everything before anyone even thought to protect her. A mother who'd done the unthinkable, left her child in the open, not to abandon him, but to give him a sliver of hope. Not everyone gets a second chance. Maybe the boy never would. But Andrew did. And this time, he wasn't planning to waste it. It started with a signature. A pen in Andrew's hand, hovering over a government-issued form titled, Intent to Foster to Adopt Emergency Placement. He had filled out dozens of forms in his life. Contracts worth millions, equity distributions, merger documents. But none had made his hand shake the way this one did. He signed it anyway. The social worker, Miss Randall, met him at his home the next day. Her hair was tied back in a loose bun, her blouse wrinkled from the day. She stepped into Andrew's penthouse apartment and blinked at the view, the skyline of Seattle glowing behind her. This is not what we usually see. Andrew gave a slight smile. I imagine not. She walked around slowly, clipboard in hand. Spare bedroom? Yes, he said, opening the door to what had been a guest suite. I had a crib delivered yesterday. She raised an eyebrow. Fast. I don't like to wait. That might be a problem. This process isn't fast. Over the next hour, she asked about his parenting style, disciplinary methods, emergency contacts, whether he had any experience with trauma, with babies, with addiction exposure in infants. He answered honestly, no. Do you understand what you're taking on? No, he admitted, but I understand what it means not to. She looked at him for a moment. Something softened in her expression. He'll need weekly checkups, maybe therapy. He might have withdrawals, developmental delays. You're not just giving him a home, you're undoing a history. Andrew nodded. I'm not here to save him. Then why are you here? He hesitated, then said, because no one saved her, and someone should have. The next hurdle was the company board. Andrew hadn't told anyone at work. Not yet. But word spread fast when he postponed meetings and declined a speaking engagement in New York. At the weekly executive briefing, someone finally asked, You're adopting a baby? A child you found at a gas station? Is this legal? Andrew sat at the head of the table, suit pressed, jaw tense. Yes, he said simply. There were whispers, glances. A few concerned investors sent emails suggesting he take a leave of clarity. One board member, more candid than most, pulled him aside. You're risking your reputation. This story, it won't land well. Tech CEOs rescuing abandoned babies? It sounds like PR bait at best, or delusion at worst. Andrew looked at him with tired eyes. It's not a story. It's a life. Back home, he found Emma waiting at the door, clutching a tiny stuffed elephant. Is he coming soon? Soon, Andrew said. They're just making sure everything's ready. Emma nodded and placed the elephant on the crib pillow. For him, so he doesn't feel alone. Andrew knelt beside her. You're amazing, you know that? She smiled. You too. For the first time in weeks, Andrew believed it. Not because he had the answers, but because he was finally asking the right questions. The baby arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. He was lighter than Andrew remembered, smaller, quieter, as if the days in foster care had drained some part of his voice. But when he was placed in Andrew's arms at the door, something in him relaxed, as if his body recognized safety before his mind could name it. Emma stood a few feet away, watching. She didn't rush over. She didn't squeal with excitement. Instead, she tilted her head and said simply, "Hi, Noah." Andrew looked at her. "You still want to call him that?" Emma nodded. "That's his name. I just know it." He didn't argue. Sometimes children don't guess, they remember. The first few days were chaos. Sleepless nights, bottles at 2 a.m., diaper explosions, crying that wouldn't stop. Emma learned to cover her ears with a pillow. Andrew learned to warm formula with one hand and scroll parenting forums with the other. One night, while pacing the living room with Noah against his chest, Andrew passed by the framed photo of Emma's mother. Her soft eyes stared out from behind the glass. He stopped. "I'm trying," he whispered. "I swear I'm trying." He didn't know if the words were for her or for himself. As the days passed, a rhythm began to form. Not easy, not smooth, but theirs. Emma took on the role of older sister with a quiet, serious devotion. She folded blankets, held Noah's pacifier when he dropped it, read him picture books even when he clearly didn't understand. One afternoon, Andrew walked into the living room and saw Emma lying beside Noah on the rug. She had placed her stuffed elephant next to him. "Why the elephant?" he asked gently. Emma shrugged. "He doesn't have anything from before, so I'm giving him something now." Andrew felt his throat tighten. She was 7 years old and already understood what many adults never do. The past cannot be returned. But the present is still ours to give. That weekend, Andrew skipped the strategy meeting for his company's new product launch. Instead, he took Emma and Noah to a park near the lake. Emma pushed the stroller while Andrew walked beside her, one hand on her back. People stared. A man in a suit pushing a newborn with a 7-year-old girl. They looked, some smiled, some didn't. Andrew noticed, but for the first time in his life, he didn't care, because for the first time he wasn't thinking about how others saw him. He was thinking about how his children would remember him, and that changed everything. It started with a comment. A woman at the park, standing near the swings, watching Andrew adjust Noah's sun hat. "Your daughter's adorable," she said. "And your adopted son? Or are you fostering?" Andrew hesitated. "Still in process." She nodded, then smiled too politely. "It's good what you're doing, taking him in, I mean, especially when they come from complicated backgrounds." He didn't respond, but the phrase stuck to him like a stain. When they come from? From where exactly? From someone broken? From somewhere dirty? That night, Andrew stared at the envelope on his desk. Inside was a home DNA test kit, one he had ordered on impulse and then ignored for days. He hadn't told Emma, or Miss Randall, or anyone. Part of him hated himself for even thinking about it. But another part, the calculating CEO-trained part, whispered louder, "You don't really know who this child is. And if he's connected to you biologically, doesn't that change everything?" The next morning, while Noah slept in his crib, Andrew gently swabbed the inside of the baby's cheek. Then he did the same to himself. The results would take 2 weeks. In that time, Andrew found himself walking differently, carrying Noah with more intention, watching for judgment in every stranger's eyes. At the office, someone made a joke during a board meeting. "You're a regular St. Joseph now. What's next? Adopting a camel." He didn't laugh. Another colleague, younger, hungrier, sent a discreet email. "Some of the investors are uncomfortable. Family drama doesn't inspire market confidence." He closed the message. At home, things were calmer. Emma had started calling herself Noah's bossy big sister. She designed cardboard mobiles for his crib and narrated imaginary bedtime stories where he was a superhero who rescued lost puppies with his magic pacifier. Andrew watched her and wondered what kind of man Noah would become, not because of who gave him life, but because of who chose to stay. When the results arrived, Andrew opened them alone. Negative. No biological match. The silence that followed was strange, not relief, not disappointment, just clarity. Noah wasn't his by blood, but he was his by everything else that mattered. He called Miss Randall the next day. "Anything changes with the adoption now that we know I'm not related?" "No," she said. "Biology was never the point." He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Then she added more softly, "But I'm glad you asked. It means you're thinking about this the right way." Andrew nodded, because now he knew. Love didn't come from proof. It came from presence. The letter came folded in thirds, government seal pressed into the corner. Andrew opened it with the steady precision of a man used to bad news dressed in formal language. It was from Child Protective Services. Your temporary guardianship status for baby boy Bell is under review. Beneath the words, in fine print, was the real blow. A formal request for the child to be transitioned to a licensed long-term foster family pending court approval. No explanation, no warning, just a system reclaiming what it believed was never his to begin with. Miss Steph, Randall called that afternoon. I didn't want it to happen like this, she said. But it did, Andrew replied, voice flat. There's pressure. From inside the agency, from your visibility, some believe the case has too much irregularity. The DNA result, the expedited placement, your job, your status, they see a media disaster waiting to happen. Andrew pinched the bridge of his nose. So because I'm not poor or unstable, I'm suspicious? They think you're a wild card. I'm a father. Silence. I'm sorry, Andrew. If you want to keep him, you'll need to fight for it, legally. He hired a lawyer the next day. Lena Crowley, adoption specialist. Sharp, gray hair and a clean bun, voice like polished stone. This won't be easy, she told him. They'll argue lack of biological connection, that your initial motivation was impulsive, that you didn't follow protocol. What do I need to do? Convince a judge that this child is already part of your family, not just emotionally, but practically, that removing him would cause harm. Andrew nodded. I can do that. She studied him. Most men in your position walk away. They write a check to some foundation and call it redemption. I'm not most men. Then let's get to work. The weeks that followed blurred. Evaluations, home visits, psychological assessments, character witnesses. Every piece of Andrew's life, past and present, was dissected. He gave statements. Emma drew crayon pictures of her little brother. Pediatricians vouched for the baby's progress under Andrew's care. Ms. Randall, though restrained, spoke in his favor. Still, there was pushback. You're a CEO, not a caregiver. Single parenthood is already high risk. No precedent supports this kind of adoption timeline. Andrew listened, and then calmly told the truth. He's not a project. He's not a cause. He's a person, and so am I. One night, after a long legal briefing, he found Emma asleep on the living room floor, Noah curled beside her. Both breathing in sync, their hands almost touching. Andrew didn't move them. He just stood there, watching, remembering, the gas station, the note, the choice that hadn't felt like a choice at all. He'd never asked for a second child, but somehow Noah had chosen him, and Andrew quietly had chosen him back. The courtroom was smaller than Andrew expected. No marble pillars, no echoing ceilings, just beige walls, tired chairs, and a judge with a nameplate that read, Han M. Graham. It was a custody hearing, not a trial, no cameras, no jury, just words, arguments, paperwork. But to Andrew, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Emma sat in the hallway with a volunteer from Child Services. She had her drawing pad and a juice box. She didn't understand the stakes, not completely, but she knew enough. Tell the truth, she whispered to Andrew before he walked in, even if it's hard. He nodded. Lena Crowley opened the case with clinical precision. She spoke of timelines, of Noah's medical improvements since placement, of the emotional bond between siblings, of Andrew's unbroken participation in every visit, evaluation, and requirement. She called witnesses, pediatrician, social worker, a parenting counselor who said, this child already has a father, not by biology, but by everything else that matters. Then came the state's attorney, cold, efficient. She cited policies, protocols, questioned Andrew's motivations. Mr. Hale, can you tell this court why, with no prior experience, no connection to the birth mother, and no legal obligation, you chose to insert yourself into this situation? Andrew's throat tightened. He looked at the judge. Then he looked down and spoke. I didn't plan for Noah, but neither did his mother. I don't know her, but I've imagined her every night. A young woman, terrified, holding her newborn son at a gas station, hoping, desperate, leaving him in a place where someone might find him. That someone was me. She didn't know who I was, but she trusted that someone might care, that someone might stay. I didn't do this because I wanted to be a hero, or because I was lonely. I did it because I couldn't pretend he wasn't real. He is. He wakes me up at 3 a.m. He cries when Emma leaves for school. He falls asleep when I hum a broken melody I don't remember learning. He's not a burden. He's a boy, a person. And I'm not a perfect man, but I'm here. I show up every single day. Silence followed. The judge sat back, then spoke. I've reviewed the documentation. I've heard the arguments. And I see two choices. One, to follow precedent, To place this child with a family selected through the standard process in the interest of procedural fairness? Or 2, to recognize that sometimes life gives us situations outside the manual? This case is not about biology. It's about attachment. It's about safety. And it's about the kind of love that isn't spoken but shown. Therefore, I'm granting full guardianship and moving to finalize the adoption of Noah Bell by Andrew Hale. Lena exhaled. Andrew closed his eyes. Outside the courtroom, Emma was still drawing. When he came out, she looked up and smiled before he even spoke. She already knew, and somewhere in his chest something uncoiled. Not relief, not triumph, just peace. 6 months later, the house was quieter. Not silent. There was still crying, laughter, the occasional crash of blocks or cereal bowls hitting the floor. But the kind of quiet that comes from safety, from routine, from knowing that tomorrow will come and it will be okay. Noah had learned to walk. Wobbly steps, arms flailing for balance, usually aimed toward Emma, who cheered like a sports commentator every time he made it 2 meters without falling. "Champion of the hallway," she'd yell, holding her hands high. Andrew watched from the kitchen, coffee in hand, letting the moment breathe. He had made changes. Stepped down as CEO, took a less public role on the board, sold the penthouse, bought a modest craftsman home near Green Lake. Fewer windows, more warmth. His days started with Noah and ended with Emma's bedtime stories. No press conferences, no stockholder briefings, no regrets. One afternoon, Emma asked about Noah's mother. "Do you think she's okay?" Andrew paused. They were sitting under a tree in the park, Noah asleep in the stroller beside them. "I don't know," he said, "but I think she wanted him to be." Emma nodded. "She was brave." He smiled. "She was." Then he pulled something from his backpack, a letter, sealed, handwritten. "For him?" Emma asked. Andrew nodded. "For when he's older, so he knows who she was, what she did." Emma looked at the envelope. "Can I write one too?" "Of course." So she did. A page in purple ink with crooked letters and hearts in the corners. That night, Andrew placed both letters in a small wooden box tucked beneath a loose floorboard in Noah's room, not to hide it, but to preserve it. Some truths didn't need to be spoken now. They just needed to be kept safe. In the final scene, Andrew pushed Noah's stroller along the lake path while Emma ran ahead, arms out like airplane wings. The air smelled of pine and summer grass. No one stared at them anymore. Not because they blended in, but because they belonged. 3 people, brought together not by blood or plan, but by choice. And that was enough. Always would be. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes the smallest decisions carry the greatest weight, and the most unexpected moments reveal the very best of us.